Probably D. Here we go.
2 minutes.
All my readers? Okay. All right. Thanks. Maybe I'll scroll back and find, because I think I texted her after that evening, and they did what on the 11th? Oh. So whatever she's doing, she has to do by November 1st?
Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to Albany City Council work session, October 24th, 2022 at 4 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Can you please do a roll call?
Yes, Your Honor. Mayor Alex Johnson II.
Here.
Councilors Olson,
Here.
Novak,
Here.
Bartholomew,
Here.
Kopczynski,
Here.
Bessie Johnson, and Smith.
Here.
All members present, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Is there any business from the public by any chance? No, Joy? Thank you very much. We're ahead of schedule already. Thank you for that. Next on the agenda, citizen advisory groups, optimization, Peter Trotzen and Mary Dibble, page 2 through 24 of your packet.
Mr. Mayor, if I could ask your indulgence, if we could take care of one bit of recognition before we go there.
Let's do that.
Okay, and I would ask that you come down front to present this award, and I'd ask Seth Sherry to come up front. The Oregon Economic Development Association, or OEDA, as it's shortened to, is a statewide nonprofit organization that works to support economic development professionals who are on Oregon's front line in diversifying and expanding Oregon's economy. Now, annually, OEDA awards the Economic Development Leader of the Year Award, recognizing innovative programs in business development. This year, OEDA has awarded Seth Sherry with this recognition. And Mayor, I'd like to ask you to present this on behalf of OEDA.
So Seth, congratulations, Economic Development Leader of the Year. And I will say this, bragging about you and the things you're doing here in front of all the other mayors makes you feel really good when I do that. So I bragged about your Oregon Mayors Association, I bragged about you around town. So it's an honor to work with you. Hopefully you have a lead our economic development mission. Appreciate it, likewise. Thanks a lot.
And Mayor, while you return, I'll just say that this award is in recognition of Seth and the city's accomplishments in business development success and innovative programs for business development. Now, I know Seth would be the first to acknowledge that his success hinges in large part on the team with whom he's surrounded, namely Sophie and Matthew Rutgers. So as you said, we're fortunate to have their creativity and their energy working toward the council's and the city's goals, specifically a healthy economy. So thank you for presenting that.
Thank you so much, Peter. Again, Seth, thank you very much for the work that you do and will continue to do and continue to do. Thank you. Next, we'll have Mary and Peter present the CAGS optimization.
Okay, good afternoon, Mayor and councilors. As you know, we've been working on optimizing the structure of our citizen advisory groups in order to optimize that structure to be more effective and efficient in providing support to the council in your decision-making role. This evening, we're returning to you with the implementing ordinances and resolutions to create 3 new citizen advisory groups. First, the Parks, Recreation, and Tree Advisory Commission. Number 2, the Transportation Advisory Commission. And number 3, the Economic Development Advisory Commission. We presented recommendations at the September 28th council meeting, and the council accepted staff recommendations with an important modification. And that modification was leaving the Airport Advisory Commission as a standalone group. You directed staff to return with the ordinances and resolutions to implement those advisory groups and to reflect that modification. In your packet for the Parks, Recreation, and Tree Advisory Commission, you'll see a proposed ordinance, including a copy with markups indicating changes from the current version and a description of the recruitment process. For the Transportation Advisory Commission, you'll see an ordinance and a resolution, as well as a description of the recruitment process. The Parks, Recreation, and Tree Advisory Commission and the Transportation Advisory Commission are created out of existing CAGs, groups that are already existing. And they're carrying on the work of the 4 CAGs that have been conjoined to create these 2. The proposed Economic Development Advisory Commission will assist and advise with development and implementation of the city's economic development strategy and provide insight to the council on evolving priorities and opportunities for investment, programming, and matters pertaining to economic development. The proposed EDAC is different in several ways from the other 2. And before we move on to the Economic Development Advisory Committee, are there any questions that you might have on the Parks, Recreation, Trees Advisory Committee or the Transportation Advisory Committee?
Councilor Novak?
Thank you. It's less a question than an observation and a concern. I can see that parks and trees do somewhat go together, and I don't really have a problem with that at all. I do take issue with the fact that rather than getting input from 14 individuals in our town, we're now limiting that to 7 individuals in our town. And some of those who have been currently serving will no longer have an opportunity. I don't really like that. I like as much citizen input as we can get. And you have the same thing happening with the Transportation Commission. We had 14 people giving input, or close to 14 people, if not 14, and because the slate isn't full, but you're taking that down to 7. So
Well, it's not just a question of getting input, because those people, any citizen in this town can come and provide input to any commission as it meets. The question is more one of recruiting for counselors and staff to recruit people who are interested in serving, but also one of obtaining a quorum. In many cases, we have quite a few meetings that were canceled for lack of full attendance. So, there's more to it than that. And there's no way, really, there should be no concern that the public cannot provide input, because as we talked about last time, there are many, many other ways to provide input as well, much more so than there were 30 years ago. So these are, I appreciate your concern. And, we have a engagement effort. In fact, we created a staff position for engagement. So it is definitely very important. But I don't think that this will compromise that effort.
Councilor Johnson, Councilor Olson after her.
Is this the time I would ask a question about the application process and that, or should I wait till later?
No, this would be fine. If what we were going to do is go on from here and talk about the Economic Development Advisory Committee. So it's a little bit different than these other 2. So if your question pertains to what we're inevitably ending up calling the EDAC, then I would wait.
Well, it's the whole application process. I mean, we are in October, and I'm thinking it sounds like you want to have the current committee members, go ahead and apply. But are you assuming that that would be for like the next year rather than having applications and appointments now and then do it again in January?
Let let Mary answer that. She's worked quite a bit on it.
Hi, thank you. The 4 groups so far have been advised that they're in kind of a limbo at the moment. They are going to, if the council approves this, then they are already on standby, and those who would like to rejoin, we're going to be starting a new application process. And for those who would like to return, they'll be given preference, of course. We do have vacancies already, and we also do have trouble meeting quorum. So my best guess is I don't think all of them will want to return anyway, but we will be asking them, if you do want to return, would you like to do 1, 2, or 3 years? And then we're going to do our best to meet their needs. Now, next year, it'll be a normal recruitment process. This year, there'll be a lot of, we'll be taking great care to make sure that those who want to return will have the term that they would like, and those who do not would finish out until December 31, and then they would be relieved.
So we're going to do it twice,
We're
basically.
only going to be doing it once. We'll start recruitment immediately if the council approves this on Wednesday.
Okay, and then whatever, I mean, we go through the appointments and,
You'd be going through appointments for terms that would begin January 1, and all the other terms would
okay,
be
that's what,
expired as
I
of
was going to say, so
12/31.
we didn't have to do it twice. I was just wondering, okay. I knew we'd get there. Thank you.
Counselor Olson?
Yes, I would like to agree with both Counselor Novak and Johnson's comments. And we had no problem at all filling committee positions. And before this council decided that we had to have appointments come from each counselor's special wards. Now, I'm counselor in a ward where there are a lot of retired people, both North Albany and the old part of Albany here. There are a lot of people that would like to serve on committees and commissions. Meanwhile, the other two wards, particularly Ward 3, there are a lot of new people who have jobs, who have families, who have kids, who aren't particularly tuned into the city government of Albany. And yes, you're going to have a hard time finding committee people in your ward. And I see absolutely no reason why we can't go back to the good old method we had before, where as long as a person lives inside the city of Albany, he or she can be appointed to a committee. So that's item 1. Item 2, you're wanting to combine these committees and commissions into combined committees, where you have some people that are interested in trees, some people that are interested in parks, for instance. And I see no reason why you can't have the separate committees for parks and trees. One of my neighbors is on the tree commission. He says that committee hardly ever meets. And I don't think it taxes staff to have a tree commission every once in a while. So I see no reason to combine these committees unless you want to further isolate yourself from the public and be done with comments from the troublesome public. That's the way I'm looking at this move. I'm opposed to it.
Counselor Smith?
I have a question about, under the,
Your mic's not on.
sorry, thank you, it is, but it wasn't close enough. Page 16 of the agenda packet, under Transportation Advisory Commission, Section 2.32.030, membership, unrestricted among certain commissions. My question is, why would city councilors be appointed as members of an advisory commission that advises the city council? I think that language comes from another part of the code that deals with the statutory commissions that can't be, people can't serve on the planning commission and the library board and the budget committee at the same time. And but it doesn't involve the members of the city council, I don't believe. So I don't know where that came from. I was just curious. It caught my eye.
What number was that, Marilyn?
Page 16.
Page 16, section 2.32.030, membership.
Okay, thank you.
It says, in order to provide for proper liaison between the planning commission, the city council, and which needs to be deleted. Nothing in this chapter shall be construed as restricting members of the city council and the planning commission from serving on the Transportation Advisory Commission. Doesn't make any sense for councilors to serve on that commission.
Right. So you could solve that, correct me if I'm wrong, but you could solve that simply by removing city council.
Yeah. So members of the Planning Commission could serve on the Transportation Advisory Commission. Okay,
But not city council. Yeah.
right. Thank you.
I think that language appears elsewhere as well. I think
It
I
does.
saw it under EDAC, which
Yeah,
made my
It
eyes
does.
pop
I
open.
sent an email related to this several days ago, and with all the page numbers attached. Thank you.
Okay.
Counselor Bartholomew, you have anything? Counselor Kopsinski? Okay. Go ahead, go ahead.
Yes, this is supposed to be a study session. And I thought we had come to the conclusion, or we were going to operate such that major decisions that involve ordinances and resolutions were
Yes.
going to be done at regular council meetings.
Yes, and
Not
that's,
at study sessions.
no, it's not planned for tonight.
We're
So
not going to
this is
consider the
this is-
ordinances.
No,
This
this
is a
is
study
what,
session.
we'll bring this back on Wednesday night for first readings of ordinances and adoption of resolutions. If here's one edit that we have to make. Now, this edit can be made in an hour, it can be made quickly. But if you have substantive changes that you want done, then it'll obviously take a little bit more time than that. But these, as they're written now, will come back to you for your adoption and reading on Wednesday night.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, then with your permission, I'll move on.
Go ahead, please.
So as I mentioned, the proposed EDAC is different in several ways. First and most obvious, it's being created from scratch to fill the need that I just described above. As you'll see in the resolution, we propose to conduct a recruitment and appointment process that is also different from most of our existing CAGs and is similar in some ways to our Community Development Commission. The proposed recruitment process would make use of the contacts we have with our local business, industrial, and educational communities to identify candidates from specific fields of expertise with demonstrated experience in these fields who've indicated a willingness to work toward the city's economic development goals. Staff would provide this list of appointments for City Council consideration and ratification. Unlike the proposed Transportation Advisory Commission and the Parks, Recreation, and Tree Advisory Commission, there are no timeline considerations for this new CAG. Recruitment will start soon after the council authorizes the establishment of the commission, if they choose to do so. Your packet includes a draft resolution which would establish the EDAC. We have anticipated that since this is a new group being formed, and since its proposed structure is different, that there may still be questions and/or concerns regarding the proposed EDAC. For this reason, I've asked Seth Sherry and Matthew Rutgers to join us this evening to share with you the conceptual idea for this group and how it will help the council and the city. And then we'll have an opportunity for any of your questions. And while we wait for Seth to come forward, are there any questions at this point?
Counselor Johnson? Nothing? Okay, go ahead, Seth. Is Matthew here?
He is, but he said he's only going to come if there's major issues and he needs to step in, so I hope it's okay. All right, there he is. We don't anticipate that. Good evening, Mayor and councilors. Thanks for giving me a few minutes. It occurred to me during the last time this was discussed with Peter at the helm. It was a little bit late in the evening. The discussion took on a little bit of a life of its own without much of an opportunity for back and forth on the strategy and thought that's gone into developing such an advisory group as the EDAC. Not caveat, but I hope we can come up with a better name than that. That's what it is for now. Working name, EDAC. We'll see what we can do. I have to note, when I was interviewed here about 5 years ago exactly, actually, this issue of an advisory board or lack of one came up. I brought it up as one of the things I thought the city could probably improve on. It's widely seen as a best practice to have an advisory group or a board of some kind around this type of work. I've been doing this work for a while now. I was reflecting this afternoon. I've been involved either on the business development side or on the public sector side of economic development for about 14 years. And I've been really privileged to get some great training and interact with colleagues from all around the country and to the world to an extent. One of the takeaways from this work is we live in a world of limited resources. And in order to have the greatest impact and ability to pursue one's strategic plan around economic development, you have to leverage every partnership and entity doing this kind of work to get the kind of impact that you like. We're always going to be limited in funds and staff for impact, and there's value for including other voices as well, of course. A couple examples of that: when a business is having a challenge, a specific challenge, we don't always have time or ability even to advise on that specific issue. Maybe it's, how do I sort out QuickBooks, right? We use the SBDC regularly and the advisors at the Small Business Development Center to help augment, these connections we're making. Maybe it's an entrepreneur, and we refer to the Regional Innovation or Entrepreneurship Innovation Network, RAIN. It may be relationships with a local bank that someone's looking to build because they want to do an expansion. So we try to use those partnerships all the time. Now, in the spirit of augmenting our work that we currently do, that's where the idea that we proposed of an Economic Development Advisory Commission has come from. The core of our work, there's some nice words and some descriptive words in the memos that you've received the last couple of weeks, but here's the core. Business retention and expansion. This is working with local businesses to make sure that they can stay, grow, hire, and expand here locally. You're way better off keeping the jobs you have than trying to recruit new jobs because of the expense and time and unsurety of that process. It's important, but that's not the bang for buck. BRNE is the best thing you can do. Secondly, we do recruitment. We do some recruitment because there is opportunity here. When you think about diversifying your economy, that's exactly what it means. You need some diversity, and recruitment is one of the ways to achieve some diversity. And then lastly, one of the really key issues that this community and many others have, and I'll say this a lot of times to you in the next few years, buildable lands, buildable lands, buildable lands. This is a major challenge for us. That is, having land that has a developable timeline for companies to expand onto, less than a year or 2 years or 5 years. That is not tenable in the private sector. Buildable lands is going to be a major issue and opportunity we'll need to tackle together, and something we spend a lot of time thinking about. So BRNE, recruitment, buildable lands, that's a lot of the core of what we do, in addition to the downtown urban renewal stuff. So with respect to one other thing, we also mentioned EDAC of playing a really important role in helping to develop a refined and new economic development strategy, which we've talked about somewhat together. We always want to avoid the we're the government, we're here to help. That's not how we like to approach economic development, and having those outside insights is really helpful there. And then lastly, that group, this proposed group, would work together with us and you to define economic development priorities and then help you, the council, make decisions on how to appropriate resources to pursue that strategy. That's really it. It's no more than that. That's a lot, but it doesn't have to be everything to everybody. And on that note, let me just make a note of what it's not. One more thing. A group design, it is not a group designed to represent every single business in town. And that's for an important reason. That doesn't mean that any single business is not important, because they're all important. But remember, we're in a world of limited resources. So you'll note I didn't propose a seat for attorneys and CPAs and retail and restaurateurs. Those are all important. But attorneys and CPAs don't drive manufacturing jobs. Manufacturing jobs drive the opportunity for retail and restaurants and CPAs and attorneys and everybody else. That's the cycle. So that is why we put some really deep thought into the proposed seats that would be represented here, as you've seen. I had originally proposed 5 because I felt like those seats really represented the core key disciplines that drive manufacturing jobs and business retention and so forth. There was some discussion in the last council meeting about moving that to 7 or expanding that to 7. And in part that was, I think there was some desire from a few of you councilors that everyone would make an appointment. What you've seen since then, and we've had some discussion about, is the value of those seats being represented, particularly by those with a proven track record in those expertise, and those who have a track record of working well and have expressed a desire to work with city staff as well, us being the primary drivers of this. So whether it's 5 or 7, again, I propose 5. It makes quorums easier. It makes us a little more nimble. It makes recruitments a little more simple. And so I just wanted to put that out there. And I'll address one more thing as well before we do Q&A. There was some discussion during the last meeting as well about making sure that I think tourism was represented on this board. And that may stem from one component to at least my team's work, and that is tourism promotion. And that's primarily been accomplished in the past and will be in the future through using outside partners, giving them funds to promote tourism and tourist opportunities here in the community. What we have not yet had a chance to talk about is a refining of that group, the transient lodging tax group. There is some opportunity to really let tourism experts focus on tourism and tourism promotion. And we actually have done some work to refine the mission and vision for that group a little bit that we'll bring to you, the council, at a later date. And that really does solidify and allow, and I think maybe remove any distractions from those who are experts in tourism to really focus on tourism promotion, which we certainly appreciate. So with that, I'll finish my comments and be happy to answer any questions.
Sinski?
Yes, looking at the membership and the five categories that you have, and some processes we actually have some weighted scoring on how things are relevant to whatever that process is. Are these going to be weighted or scored in any way, shape, or form, or is it just a free-for-all for all of the staff time and funding and et cetera, et cetera?
I'm not actually sure I understand your question, Councilor Kopczynski. Can you just define it a little bit more, please?
Hypothetically, if there's a good development of some sort, whatever, or a good retention, is there going to be any more weight given to, say, looking for manufacturing versus general business
Sure.
versus higher education? And is that going to be an ongoing process, or is that a floating target? It just depends on what opportunity arises, and that's
Yeah.
what we go after.
I see. That's a good question. And this may not have been part of your question, but let me clarify too. Those 5 seats there are not the economic development priorities, but the types of people who play a role in the recruitment, retention, and development of business.
Okay, so
So the priorities are yet to be established, really, and that would happen through the economic development strategy development.
okay, and that'll take some time.
Oh, yeah. Although it's not necessarily mystery either. But forthcoming.
Counselor Smith?
This, to me, sounds like something similar to the way we choose members for the Planning Commission, the Landmarks Commission, and there's another one, people who have specific interests or expertise in certain areas related to, an Arts Commission is an example, an artist or, yes, all of those. They're categories to consider when choosing members, rather than giving them specific weight. I suppose specific skill sets would be rearranged in different patterns depending on the project they might
Sure.
be advising on.
Sure.
Yeah.
And Councilor Smith, I'll just note too, as we've been developing this idea, I've been chatting with those partners, those specific kind of people I'm talking about their potential interest in participating in a group like this. I've had resounding excitement, and should you approve moving forward with this, I think I have a very exciting list of names that you'll be very pleased to see. Really some heavy-hitting community members who have a desire to work on this kind of thing.
Counselor Novak?
Thank you. I recall from when we first were discussing the Economic Development Commission, the development of this, that we were very clear that we wanted some individuals from TLT to be on it. Tourism is a very big part of economic development, and I think that when I first read the list of the types of individuals that you envisioned for this particular commission, I was surprised by at least one of them, and I think that it makes more sense, quite honestly, and I recall us being in agreement that TLT would be represented on the Economic Development Commission, and I still feel very strongly about that. But to me, it makes more sense to have construction or land developers or both And I don't really see the point of academics, and maybe not even bankers and financiers. I know you work with them, and that's great, but I don't necessarily see that that would be important to this committee. I think I really want to see at least the same representation from TLT and people who actually work in development, land developers, construction developers, and not so much academics. That really surprised me. I don't see the connection.
Well, maybe some clarification is helpful, Councilor Novak. Academia is represented there because Lynn Benton Community College is the most effective driver of trained workforce in our community. And over the years, the city's actually invested over $3 million in this. The university or the college invested in total over $13 million in creating a center there that specifically trained students for the types of jobs in manufacturing and so forth that drive our economy here in Albany. And they have shown a willingness regularly to adapt their curriculum to the needs of local businesses, small and large. So representation from LB is critically important because workforce, as you know, is such a key part of economic development. If you can't hire and you can't hire skilled, good tradespeople, you can't grow. You can't meet opportunity. So that's why that's on there. Development is represented. Business finance is key because in very rare circumstances do businesses do significant sized expansions without borrowing money. And understanding what the borrowing environment is and what the opportunities are for lending and adapting lending programs to local needs is absolutely crucial. Whether in the time of COVID type of issue, you recall this, we actually used a local lending institution to get out over $200,000 of the city's own one-time monies to help support restaurants in particular to weather the storm until federal money became available. We work with financing institutions all the time, and that is the key. In fact, the reason why you see inflation and interest rates being affected is actually trying to affect lending rates and growth patterns. That's the whole relationship there. So really, really important.
So can I add something there? When I moved here from San Diego, California, to be a manager at HP, they had a technician apprentice program at LBCC. And one of the things that I used that program for, so I had to hire 162 people, but what I used it for is that we had several dozen people, specifically women, that were going through that program because it's pretty much a male-dominated maintenance environment at HP. And when I was manager at HP, I hired 30 women over that 10-year period from that program to work at HP. And when I left there to take a promotion at Agilent Technologies, the young lady that replaced me had graduated from LBCC. So it's a great incubator of talent and skilled workforce. So I support that.
Councilor Novak, I don't know if that satisfies you, but maybe you did bring up TLT again. The list of seats, which is on that, has not changed since the last time we spoke. And again, I wanted a chance to have some back and forth. I know that one or two of you did bring up TLT, having some representation here. Two things to that. One, the transient lodging tax group, really it should be a tourism promotion group. That's really where their expertise and experience lies, should be focused on that. As an overall strategy for growth and economic vitality in the community, tourism plays a relatively small part relative to manufacturing. And that's not me making up anything, it's just the way that it is. It's not that it's not important, and it's not that Rebecca doesn't do a great job of promoting the assets that we do have, but it's not a driver of our economy in the way that it is in Bend or Lincoln City or even Portland or Sandy or any number of the kind of tourist destinations we think about. The primary driver in job retention, creation, and new money coming into our community is in manufacturing. And we can talk more about the data that drives that and why that is, but that's just the way that our community is. Until that changes, tourism is not going to drive our economy, but it's a great amenity to promote here, and it does support a number of local businesses, which we should celebrate. And that's really why we have a TLT, or hopefully a tourism promotion group here moving forward.
Councilor Bartholomew?
Thank you. I know that you were saying that you have the 5 core group, and the 7 was suggested as a representative.
Possibly speak a little closer to your mic.
I shall begin again. You said 5 core, and I understand very much the idea for the manufacturing, because that's a specific target for the East Albany plan as well. But I was also thinking of, you brought up RAIN, which is
Sure.
entrepreneurs, and I don't know if that is a significant factor, but it seems like we are moving, I mean, I don't know if that would be an economic driver, but yeah, I was thinking of RAIN, technology, medical fields. Are those drivers of economics?
Yeah. So again, the seats that are there are not defining what our economic development priorities are. They're not defining where we spend our time. It was an effort to define the main sorts of professions that facilitate growth, no matter what your sector is, whether it be healthcare or tourism or, in this case, we're talking about manufacturing and all the related businesses. So you brought up entrepreneurs and what role do they have in the economy? So again, I think we can have a really good discussion about this as we go to develop a more defined, refined, or refocused strategy for the community. But supporting entrepreneurs is really important. You never know where the next big growth group is going to come from, right? And with entrepreneurs in particular, it's really special because you get folks who maybe have had a lifetime of industry experience, who see a need, a pain point, what they call it in entrepreneurship, and then they figure out a way to address that pain point. Absolutely. That's always a priority, and the reason that we have worked with the kind of people who support entrepreneurs directly, and we work with them as well. I've worked with a lot to find space to get out of their basement, into and find physical space, for example. Yeah.
Most recently with Chris Hansen, right?
Yeah, you'll recall this council approved a sizable grant to help Chris Hansen build that flexible manufacturing space to get the folks out of their garages and basements and storage units into some actual scalable space. That's exactly right.
Go, Councilor
Yeah,
Johnson.
I did have one question. Going back to the different groups that would be seated at the table, the education, the learning, LBCC, we were involved in the pipeline
Yeah.
project for so long. And right now, there is such a need for the technical trades that I think that when you have businesses, land development, finance, and actually, I don't see anything in here, okay, land development, does that mean contractors and things like that?
Well, in this case, what we envisioned is in terms of development, to actually develop land, no matter what your final use is, and no matter who does the actual work, a carpenter or an electrician or a mason, solving the challenges of both finance, infrastructure access, and in our case, wetland mitigation falls squarely on the shoulders of people who do development. They're the ones laying the table. Again, we do that work in-house, but augmenting what we're doing would be phenomenally helpful.
Yeah, so this is kind of the top layer, and then the trades and things like that would come in the next layer, where after the businesses are brought in or thought about it, whatever, then the workers and everything would be included in that, which would create the jobs.
Absolutely. There's always direct and indirect jobs with any
Yep.
project, right?
Yep.
The direct jobs are the ones that are being created to fill the manufacturing space or what have you. Indirect ones are the builders and the skilled trades people and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Counselor, I guess I would say that the trades can't go to work until that table has been set.
Yes, exactly. And then going from the 5 to 7, if we went with 5, how would that work? I mean, would you or the city manager take the applications in and then present them to us, and then we
Right, the word is ratification.
thin them out? I don't know.
Well, he would, as I tried to explain that in one of the paragraphs, but I probably didn't do it justice. But I'll just go back to that and say that this proposed recruitment process would make use of the contacts that not just Seth has, but Sophie has and Matthew Rutgers has with local business, industrial, and educational communities to identify candidates from specific fields of expertise who have the demonstrated experience in those fields, but perhaps most importantly, who have indicated a willingness to work toward the city's economic development goals. And staff would provide that list of appointments for city council consideration and ratification. So that, you would look at that list as I envision it, and I would invite Seth to comment. If you had a real problem with one of them, which I really don't doubt that would happen, or I really do doubt that would happen, you would speak up and talk about it. But otherwise, you'd look at that and say, yep, those 5 people or those 7 people, that works. And you would ratify it on a vote.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. Thank you.
Counselor Novak?
Thank you. I do appreciate what you had to say about the folks at LBCC, and God knows my family goes way back with LBCC, and I have a lot of respect for higher education and that school in particular. Because LBCC, we can count on them, they have a track record of working with the city, and I didn't know they arranged their curriculum specific to working with the city. I don't know, you're saying because they do these things, we need to reward them with a seat on this, or they won't continue to do that unless they're represented here, or why do we?
Yeah, not at all. Neither one of those reasons. The workforce representation of skilled workforce is critical for a community thinking about supporting growth and existing businesses. Existing businesses have needs, specifically around workforce development. If you don't have land, you don't have workforce, and you don't have buildings, you don't have work. And so all 3 of those things are represented in this group. And the evolving needs and opportunities in Albany and that of LBCC to meet those is critical. And Lisa might be mad at me for giving you a little spoiler, but in chatting with Lisa Avery, the president of that organization, she's expressed a strong desire to participate on this. She's the kind of representation I'm talking about, who has the ability to drive curriculum at a community college that's really there to create workforce for local businesses. And that kind of representation is invaluable. And it's not a reward, it's a recognition of their willingness and past record, as you noted, to continue to participate and evolve and be nimble based on contemporary needs.
And if one of us knows, I'm sorry, did I jump out of turn?
No, you're still, you
Okay,
had the
I
floor.
thought I still had the floor.
No, you
but-
do. You still have the
Okay.
floor.
If one of us wanted to put someone forward that we know with expertise on any of these categories, would we be permitted to do that? Or is this something where staff is reserving the right to, I'm just asking. Because in the past, we've always put people forward on commissions and committees, and
Right. Now, you heard Seth talk about leveraging the resources that are available to us. So in this case, counselors certainly have contacts that we ought to make use of. And if there is somebody who does come to you and express that interest,
Send them forward.
what I would just say is please tell them, contact our economic development manager, Seth Sherry, and work that out.
and then they would fill out an application like
Well,
the other
you know,
people that you?
You go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I think the exact process we're working on, but the idea is there's a suite of options for you, the council, to ratify, whether maybe in some cases driven by specific recommendations from counselors or from those who we work with on a day in and day out basis.
Thank you. I appreciate knowing that we potentially have input on this.
Well, I got a list of names for myself, yeah. All about it. Counselor Olson, are you done? Are you done?
I'm done, yes.
Counselor Olson?
Yes, are these advisors going to live in the city of Albany?
Expressly, yes. That being said, you could choose as a council to make a exception if you wanted to. It's not up to me to decide. The point is now to work with people who do live in Albany. So I'll leave it at that.
However, we have changed it so that it's not restricted by ward, in recognition of the fact that
People that,
as I talked about, this list of, or this requirement for expertise and experience and a willingness to serve in that capacity could conceivably bring this down to a very small pool of people.
Yeah. I think our city department heads ought to live within the city of Albany. Thank you.
okay, I think we have a thumbs up to go forward. You have anything, Ray? Counselor Olson? So thumbs up.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Thanks for your attention. And we'll bring this back on Wednesday with that change to city council that Councilor Smith noted. And we'll bring it back that evening for adoption of resolutions and first readings of ordinances. Thanks for your time.
Will you add a line about us being able to bring someone forward? Because that's not in there. There's nothing about the council being
Right.
able to,
Submitting names or whatever.
Yes.
recommendations.
There is nothing that keeps you from doing that with any.
okay, I didn't know if you needed to put the language in there or not.
No,
So,
yeah, I mean, you,
yeah, great.
So next on the agenda is Curry Meadows Infrastructure and Right-of-Way Agreement. Ron Irish, page 25 through 37 in your packet. Thank you for joining us tonight, Ron.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. At your work section on September 12th, you authorized staff to negotiate a draft right-of-way and infrastructure agreement that would involve a piece of property the city owns, the Park Department owns, south of Oak Creek on the east side of Lochner Avenue, with an adjoining parcel to the south. That adjoining parcel is privately owned. It's on the southeast corner of Lochner and Ellingson and is currently the subject of a subdivision. I believe it's 101 lots that is under review at the moment. So the infrastructure agreement, and I will refer you to page 31, which is Exhibit A in your packet. And Exhibit A is kind of an outline of what that subdivision looks like. And you'll see that at the north boundary along Lochner Road, there's a proposed road that goes into the subdivision from Lochner. That road is split on the property line between the city parcel and the subdivision. So 50-50, half of the right-of-way from the city, half of it from the subdivision. And it is that split that is the subject of the infrastructure and right-of-way agreement. Normally, when you see a subdivision come in and it borders an adjoining property that's not developing, they will build a partial width street. And they'll put in water and sewer, curb and gutter on their side. And the balance of the street is improved at some point in the future when that adjoining parcel subdivides. In this case, the city staff and the developer see some mutual benefit if the full road improvement goes in up front. The developer likes the idea of a full road improvement that goes into their subdivision as kind of a finished look. And the agreement here the city obligation would be that the city would agree to dedicate the right-of-way for the road. It's a little over 7,500 square feet. It extends a distance of about a little over 300 feet in from Lochner. We would also grant the developer a temporary construction easement of 15 feet in width next to that, so they have the ability to build it. And we'd give them a temporary construction agreement a little bit further east where they're building another interior road that abuts the city property, but not on the city property. So they'd have a construction easement, temporary construction in those two spots. What the city would get out of it would be our right-of-way dedication would be considered participation in the road construction and the water and the sewer for that chunk of that 300-foot length of road coming in off of Ellingson. And the significance of that is that when the Parks Department or the city at some point develops that parcel, we won't be subject to payment of connection fees for water, sewer, storm drain, and street, which would otherwise have to be paid. So the city sees that advantage. The developer sees the advantage of a full street going into their development. And it looks like both parties in this case think they see some benefit, mutual advantage. And so the draft agreement's in your package, and if you like the agreement, you have two options. You could tonight, just by motion, approve it, and the city manager would be able to sign it. Or if you would prefer, we could bring it back to you at a regular meeting, and you could approve it at that point. So either of those two options would work, and I'll stop and take questions.
Councilors?
I can see it just brought back for a consent agenda item on Wednesday.
Council's okay with that?
I didn't hear what he said.
He wants us to bring back as a consent agenda item on Wednesday?
I appreciate that. I do have a question.
Go ahead, please.
I see on the map at the end of that very long cul-de-sac, it looks like a pass-through between the two properties on the very end of the cul-de-sac. Is that what that is? Pedestrian pass-through of some sort?
There's a proposed pedestrian path from the end of the cul-de-sac out to Lochner, and there's also kind of a flag that goes from the very north end of that cul-de-sac into what looks like a water quality pond. But the dark line, the dark connection is a bike ped connection between the cul-de-sac and Lochner Road.
Oh, I see.
So
Right there.
that thing at the end of that pass-through is a water quality pond?
I believe so.
Okay, well, I guess that's not quite as attractive as a
Mayor.
splash park or something of that nature.
Um,
And
microphone.
it's on. I guess I'm not talking loud enough. I find pass-throughs like this are a problem most places where they are. And I know it's up to the developer to do what he thinks is right, but I think he's looking for trouble having a pass-through there. So, just a comment.
So I think we have a thumbs up to come back with the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, please. Councilor Smith has a comment.
Just on behalf of the late Councilor Reed, this I appreciate the full street construction rather than constructing a partial street.
Yes, very much so.
Next on our agenda is business from the council. Is that supposed to be a capital C? Okay. Council, let's start over here with Councilor Novak. We'll go this way.
Nothing this evening.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Kopsinski,
Nothing this evening?
Councilor Smith.
I've been in contact with my appointee to the Arts Commission about changes to the Arts Commission's mission, reason for being, and future, and I would like to discuss that at a later time.
Councilor Olson.
I've been doing a lot of walking around in the part of Ward 1 on this side of the river, and most people say they really enjoy living in Albany, and that's reassuring to a longtime councilman.
Thank you for that. Councilor Bartholomew.
Nothing at this time.
Councilor Johnson.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Thank you. I just have one thing. Yeah, one thing for tonight. I got a phone call from a new client. I won't use his name, but he works for a company that builds helicopters, and the CEO reached out to me and said he'd like to talk to us about a helicopter pad or something out at the airport. So I'll be getting with Seth and Peter to talk about that. Other than that, the city manager's report.
I'm all in favor of a helicopter pad.
Oh, I forgot about that, yeah. They used to lady to get beat, though.
I just have a few things for you. In the Friday report of last week, I told you that April Spisak was taking over as deputy director of the library. I was wrong. She's serving as the interim deputy director.
Okay.
And that's significant because it gives the director some time to think about how he's going to fill that position and perhaps if a restructuring is in order. In any case, I'm grateful to April for serving.
Are we doing anything special for her?
Well, no, I mean, this just happened, so
Okay.
no, not at this time.
Okay, thank you.
The Oregon Mayors Association, I'm sure the mayor probably knows about this, but the Mayors Association has sent out a letter. The subject line is Partnership Needed to Solve Statewide Homelessness Emergency. And I will be sending that out to all of you. I just wanted to give you a heads up so you have a little bit of an idea of what that's for. They're looking for support from each of the 241 cities in Oregon in lobbying the legislature for these funds that they see going to help cities respond to homelessness. The Budget Committee will be meeting two times. Do you remember, I think most of you, all of you remember 2 years ago, we had a council retreat in which you heard briefings on the state of operations for each of our mission areas and how what people saw in the future as they looked down the road. And some of you who were brand new at the time, that was your first exposure to missions that we have. Believe it or not, it's that time again in January. Well, this time, though, we plan on bringing the 7 lay members of the Budget Committee in, too. So they will actually be Budget Committee work sessions. So that's scheduled for January 23rd and 24th, which is a Monday and a Tuesday. And there'll be more coming at you about that in the future, so you don't need to write that down. We've also talked about joint meetings with Benton County Board of Supervisors, Board of Commissioners, and Lynn County and the GAPS, the school district. So I want to tell you that Lynn County will invite the council to join them for an elected officials lunch on Wednesday, the 1st of February. And again, there'll be more coming to you on that, so you don't need to worry about writing it down. And I think that is it, other than to tell you that I will be out of the office Wednesday through Friday this week, so please be nice to Chris Bailey on Wednesday night.
Not likely.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, Peter, for your report. With that, I will adjourn the meeting now at 4:54, 6 minutes ahead of the scheduled event, and we're getting ready for the Joint Planning Commission meeting.